Welcome to Who Wrote That Up for You, a daily podcast that shines a light on the American justice system and its role in empowering the powerful to take from you. The justice system is the only branch of your government where an individual rather than the collective can make the system act for you. It puts power in the individual's hands, but it's broken and being used against you at a time when you need it most.
And we are live on Who Wrote That Up for You. Welcome. Today is Thursday, September 15th. I am Sonia Ebron, one of the co-founders at Courtroom 5.
I am Deborah Sloan, the other co-founder of Courtroom 5.
And we've got a fantastic show for you today. In a few moments, we will have Professor Kevin P. Lee, full professor at North Carolina Central University School of Law, who's done some extraordinary work around artificial intelligence applications, which are everywhere these days, and some of the ethical issues that arise from the use of that technology. So we'll get into that extensively with Professor Lee. But before we do, Deborah, what is on your mind today?
I want to talk a little about the Baltimore woman, Marcella Holloman, whose son was killed by police back in 2012. The state of Maryland refused to bring legal action against the police officers. But Marcella, she was determined to at least get some justice on this. And so she learned that she could file a lawsuit in court and have the case brought before a grand jury. So late last year, a court ruled that she herself can bring her case to a grand jury. Let the grand jury hear her. Let the grand jury decide whether to indict the police officers. That's what we mean when we say using the court to get your power.
That's extraordinary. Yeah, I remember seeing a brief mention of that story. If I recall correctly, she had actually, when the prosecutors, her district attorney refused to do anything about it, if I recall correctly, she tried to file a civil lawsuit in federal court and unfortunately did that on her own without any assistance and had that case dismissed. This happens so often with people trying to manage the courts on their own. But it is extraordinary that she's been able to find this sort of a solution. And you remind me, I think there was something similar in the state of Ohio just a few years
Mm.
ago over the killing of Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old boy, young black boy. Yeah, that terrible story went nationwide. And if I recall correctly, there was some citizen action around that and trying to get some justice on the criminal side uh, using a similar mechanism. I hope I didn't follow that story very much. I hope something positive came from it, that there was some sense of justice at least
Exactly.
for the family. Wish Miss Holloman here the best of luck on exercising her rights, and we absolutely want to encourage people to just explore all of the rights that may be afforded to you. You won't necessarily hear them on the major news media for sure, but there are some rights available for citizens in these cases. Fantastic. Thank you for that recollection, Deborah. This podcast, Who Wrote This Up for You, is sponsored by Courtroom 5. I just want to mention it. Courtroom 5, we believe the courts belong to the people, in particular to the people who use them. And we, the people, are coming to claim our courts. So if you are in court without a lawyer, or if you need to sue someone and can't afford legal representation, get yourself over to courtroom5.com. Try it out for free, and hopefully we can provide some assistance for you there. But at this time, it's my great pleasure to bring on Professor Kevin P. Lee. Professor, how are you today? Thank you so much for joining. Who wrote that up for you?
Thank, thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here. I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day.
So
It
let me
is.
properly introduce you. Professor Kevin P. Lee is a full professor at the North Carolina Central University School of Law here in Durham. He's done some fantastic work on the future of law. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you were the founding member of the Future of Law Committee for the North Carolina State Bar, and have done some fantastic work there, I am told. Want to hear more about that, but we want to chat today about your work in artificial intelligence and the ethical issues that arise. First question then, we see AI everywhere, just doing some tremendous things. Certainly we have some applications of it at Courtroom 5. What are the sorts of ethical issues you see arising around the use of artificial intelligence these days?
Yeah, thanks for that's a great question. One of the things that I like to always start with is asking what we mean by it. It's a lot of different things, right? It ranges now. We use the term rather loosely. Thing that's an automated system that I think one of the it's a system that does what it's supposed to do. you know, it's probably about right, but it's very broadly used. But so the real issues that have occurred have been with the development of machine learning and tremendous amount of growth in the potential for it to. I think it's fair to say that it touches on just about every area that we have. So, the law is just one, also touching how we interact with each other in many different ways, from social media. It impacts our health, health diagnostics, and all sorts of things that way. And it's being used more and more, and by the government in setting policy. And so we broad understanding now of AI as a new way of organizing, and it has the ability, at least occasionally, to the ability of humans to perceive patterns and to make some kind. So I don't want to overplay it because I think it gets overhyped quite a bit, but it has this impact. So when you're talking ethical issues around, they touch on ethical issues in a very, very broad array. I know I'm often looking at news, and that can occur in many different ways. I think it was about a month ago now that the city of New York that requires any company using a screen resumes has to demonstrate through an audit that it's not exactly what that means and how it's going to be carried out. I have no idea, but it does show a direction where we're beginning to see these concerns coming up. Facial recognition has it's it has a lot of issues. It has facial images and connect them to names. It has what the algorithms are and so on. So it's interesting that I noticed recently an article on AI being used Ukraine government to identify Russian soldiers who are accused. So it has that's a very current issue that violates international law is an issue too. But they say it's a very broad area. It also challenges about how we make ethical judgments in general and what it means to them, right? So those are some of those things that I think are and thinking sort of very broadly about it. One of the things we want who's using it, who's developing it, and what standards and goals are being set forward, right? This is something that I don't think it's, if you look, one of the controversies now has to do with data is looked at as a raw material that can it exists, right? No matter whose data it is, and with little regard to data, the data profiting from the use, right? And then when you look, most of the AI is in developed countries, a lot of northern, and a lot of data is being collected now in sub-Saharan Africa, and it has this colonialism, right, where it's sort of replaying the colonialism of the past with, instead of and resources that are physical, it's now information, right? But it's kinds of consequences. So yeah, I'm all over the being all over the map here, but intentionally the issues all over the map. And it's I think a tremendous.
The question was meant to take you all over the map because it is so fun. Please continue.
Really exciting time to be doing this kind of work, because the new Apple M2 chip, right? 8 billion transistors, 20 billion.
Yeah.
And if Moore's law, right, how long will it be before it hits 1 trillion? Not that long. Maybe 5 or 6. 1 trillion is a important number of connections. I mean, I'm going to say complexity at a level similar to a human. That's assuming that we understand what neurons are and how brains work, but which is we're getting to that level now where these things are going to be extremely powerful. They're being deployed.
Yep.
So
yep.
They'll be, once they're deployed, it's going to be a lot.
Oh, it is. I have some background in machine learning applications too. In a former life, I worked in electric utilities, and so I know that all of it depends on the data you input into those algorithms. And machine learning is essentially, without getting too technical, we're talking about hyper geometrical statistics. And so the data that you bring in really determines your outputs there and the decisions that are made. And so it depends on what you sample, for sure. So if you oversample in a particular area, you're going to get results biased in a particular area. So there are obviously some legal arenas where that can be very dangerous, as you've outlined.
Oh yeah,
sure. This is a very, very interesting discussion. Professor, if we can put you on ice for just a moment,
sure.
I'd love to continue to chat about some of these issues, and we'll do our challenge. Just hold on there for just a moment. Deborah, what is our challenge today? Who won yesterday, and how are you teeing us up for tomorrow?
All right. Okay, let me start by reminding people that these are general legal questions we're asking in these quizzes. And we ask that you consult the statutes and rules in your jurisdiction to inform your own case. Okay, so yesterday's quiz question was, what can happen if you file your complaint in the wrong court? And that quiz answer is, your opponent can have the complaint dismissed without prejudice for improper jurisdiction or venue. And let me just cover a couple of legal terms here. Prejudice is the dismissal or disposition of the case by a judge, and a dismissal with prejudice ends the case, and the plaintiff cannot refile the case. And a dismissal without prejudice means that the case is dismissed, but the plaintiff can bring the case back, can refile the case. Jurisdiction is the authority of the court to take the case. Some courts are not authorized to hear certain cases. And then finally, venue is the physical location of the court. Okay, so the person that got the closest to the correct answer was Alex O.
I am betting. was going to say
All
I
right.
embedded Alex is has some sophisticated legal knowledge there. That's a great
Yeah,
answer. What
yeah.
congratulations to Alex nonetheless for that. What's
Okay.
tomorrow's?
Tomorrow's quiz is or today's quiz is a multifaceted quiz with a scenario. And here it is. Kelsey filed a lawsuit against Dr. Fig Newton for medical malpractice. Dr. Newton filed a motion to dismiss, asserting, among other things, that Kelsey failed to state a cause of action. What does Dr. Newton mean by that? What does Dr. Newton mean by failing to state a cause of action? To take the challenge, just send your responses to quiz@courtroom5.com, and that email address is running along the bottom of your screen there.
That will be fun. I'm looking forward to seeing certainly some of those. That's a very common thing we see certainly at Courtroom Five. Well, let me bring Dr. Lee, Professor Lee, back on to continue our discussion. And so, Professor, I know that you've done a good bit of work in building programs to address some of these ethical issues. Can you tell
Mm,
us a bit about your work there?
So, I mean, I haven't been at Central very long, but I was at Campbell Law School before that and did some work there too. I- I've been teaching in this area for about 10 years, which I think is 10 years ago. Uh, I was one of the, I think, in thinking about how artificial intelligence was impacted, and I began to see uh, predictive analysis being used. That I've been trying to do is develop classes to help young law students find out what's going on and begin to develop. I think in using the new tools, but
mm,
also a sort of deeper understanding of what it actually means and how they need to start thinking of law a little differently and frame it differently. So mainly I've been developing classes in I have been teaching jurisprudence in the area for a long time, which is the philosophy of law, and thinking about how that's being changed by legal technology. I worked on as the founding director for for the North Carolina Bar Association's Future Law Committee,
mm,
and just really produced a report for the practicing bar to help them understand the changes and I've been working here on an emphasis more to policy, AI policy, and I've been trying to. I always think there's legal technology, which is about AI in the law, which is about the law applied to the technology and trying to understand and control it to some degree. So that I've sort of shifted more into that area, trying to develop some interesting. I think we have nothing I can talk publicly about on the horizon for some collaborative projects. I'm teaching a class policy to a great group of students, and end up looking at uh, how different countries around the world are, and how the policies are developing in the U.S. Um, at many levels, state level, and they're very different. There's no policy in the United States, so we
mm,
have lots of different people talking, and the president, the Congress, and they're all trying to figure out what's going on and make policies. We've spent a lot of time studying that. And I
Fantastic.
think the future looks fantastic, though. I mean, this is an area that's going to, there are several initiatives out there uh, that will and new regulations around AI. And I think as that happens, we have a need for people who understand what's going on, to understand those new laws, as they're going to need to understand.
Absolutely.
Something we're educating students for that, I think. Couple of years.
That's fantastic. I've had the pleasure of speaking to some of the law students that, as a non-lawyer, as someone in legal tech, alongside your training them in some of the legal technologies. They've often wanted to understand what we were doing at Courtroom 5 in that area. So you've got some great law students there. Great to see that they're getting this sort of training. One of the words
they're wonderful students. They truly are wonderful students.
They are. One of the words that I wanted to circle back on, because as I looked at, just briefly perused some of your ample writing on these issues, the word jurisprudence kept coming up over and over, and as well it should, it seems to me. But I wonder if you could share with our audience, and I know you could probably do an entire lecture or course on this single word, but what should we, non-lawyers understand about the term jurisprudence? What does that mean?
So, I mean, like jurisprudence is really the philosophy of law, and it's excuse me, it's been for the last maybe 100 years. I'm really asking, what is and how is it related to, say, morality, right? Because one way of looking at the law is what's written in the books, you know. It has some moral goals or purposes. And both of those arguments and really still are influential in the courts, right? So but how you answer that question is going to determine who would solve a case if you were a judge, right? Should the judge just look or should the judge be thinking about the moral purposes of the law, especially when, right? So those kinds of things are really important. I think our understanding of those questions to some degree, and in ways that we have to be, excuse me, I keep coughing. For example, I mean, if analytics now, which is to say we can predict the outcomes of lawsuits, what judges have done in the past. And that suggests to me there may be other things going on with rigid logic of law that allow for that prediction to, and also for it not to occur, which is, you know, that's the really interesting thing, is what's the right answer every time, right? Why do we only get maybe a good prediction? Be maybe, well, you know, there's other things that are intervening in there, and then we can begin to try and figure out what those things matters a good deal, I think, because for law to be something that we resolve to matter, it has to be good, right? And why would we respect the rule of law given to us by the government? And it's only as good as, you know. So we need to have a understanding of that. And I think as we develop legal technology, we want to make sure that the technology ends up creating a legal system where the rule. And I think that's challenging, honestly. I mean, we want to make the law more accessible. We want to make sure it's accessible and valued.
Fair. That's right. And understood. Fantastic. Professor Lee, thank you so much for that education today and the work that you're doing on these ethical issues. Very important ethical issues. We'll be in touch. So happy to have you locally here and to be able to bring you onto the show. And again, we'll do that very, very soon.
Thank you. And really, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
We'll do it again. You bet. Thank you so much. Enjoy it.
Take care.
All right.
That's extraordinary. I am just so grateful. There's so many wonderful things about being here in North Carolina, but to be able to demonstrate the wealth of talent we have here at the area. And I should just note that North Carolina Central University is one of the very few historically black colleges and universities with a law school, and that's right here in Durham, North Carolina. And as Professor Lee said, he's new to the institution, not certainly new to the area. Campbell Law School is right here as well, but just
Right.
so valuable, wonderful to have him here at North Carolina Central and educating these very bright students.
I can imagine all the I mean, I was just listening to him talk and I could just imagine all the things that could be done with AI. Some of it was scary,
Yeah,
but just just thinking about we have 6 million we have a database of 6 million appellate cases,
yeah,
appellate opinions,
yeah,
and put some AI on. Okay, let me stop. Anyway, it could be scary or it could be fascinating,
that's right. That's
and
right.
so the AI just opens up a world of opportunity, I think.
It is technology, and like all technologies, they can be used for good and for ill.
Hmm.
And as the users and just human beings developing and using it have to, we have to have these ethical questions to guide us towards the positive uses of technology and away from the negative uses of it. So just very, very happy to have Professor Lee and his talents applied in that area.
Glad he used the word morals because we don't hear it that often when we talk about the law.
Not often enough. That's true. That's true. Or ethics for that matter. So
Yeah.
nonetheless, that's all we've
All
got
right.
for you today. Thanks again, Professor Lee, for joining us. We'll have you again on soon. And thanks to our audience for joining in. Yeah, we will see you as always on tomorrow. Thanks
All
very
right.
much.
Are you feeling beleaguered, angry, or afraid, as if things are spinning out of control and you're powerless to stop them? It's easy to just let things slide and hope they don't get worse. But they often do get worse. The thing is, you're not powerless. Our courts belong to us, and their purpose is to give power to the powerless. Don't let your grievances pile up without redressing them. You can handle this in court. Or, if someone takes you to court, you can take them to school.